Oh, it's absolutely been worth it. I mean, I'm extremely disappointed that a small number of peers in the House of Lords have not been able to bill to pass when it was voted for by the democratically elected chamber MPs in the House of Commons, who took this vote and this decision very seriously. But actually, the debate that we've had in this country about the choice that I believe terminally ill people should have in their dying days has been moved on to the next level. And the law will change. It's a matter of time. It's happening in many other jurisdictions. Public support for a change in the law is huge. So even though it's been incredibly hard work, it's been extremely emotional. I've spent time with terminally ill people themselves and the families who've lost loved ones under very traumatic circumstances. It's absolutely worth it. And the bill will come back and the law will eventually change. And I think that provides reassurance and comfort amidst the frustration and the anger about what's happened this time. Yeah, so I'm extremely upset that this is where we've ended up. The bill could have been passed. It could have been one of the most important social changes that this government saw through, whilst remaining neutral on the issue, of course. And I'm not upset for me. It's been a lot of hard work and I've taken a lot of abuse and it's been quite unpleasant at times, if I'm honest. But I'm upset for the families that I've spent time with. I'm upset for the terminally ill people who have shared their stories with me and shared their fear. And just that desire for the control that they want to take in their final few months of life. And I've spent a lot of time with those people. And they're in trauma about what they've been through, and they just want to give other terminally ill people the choice that a change in the law would give them. And it is about choice. You know, it's like gay marriage, isn't it? Marry who you want to marry, but let's create a legal framework for that to happen, and for that to happen in this case safely, with the many safeguards that the bill puts in place, far safer than the current situation where we have people taking their own lives because they're so desperate in their final days, loved ones facing prosecutions. You know, there's a clear legal case for the law to change, and that's why 4 former directors of public prosecution support a change in the law, including the Prime Minister himself, of course. But also the compassionate argument for me is at the heart of this. I don't know what I would do in my dying days. I don't know whether I would choose this choice or not, but I think we should be giving terminally ill people the choice that a change in the law would provide. Oh, I think, look, I mean, anybody working in politics these days knows that it's not a pleasant environment on many occasions. This is a deeply emotive issue and I understand that. I've always been very respectful of different views. And I also know there's colleagues in Parliament, in the Commons and in the Lords who would never vote for a change in the legislation. Most people have managed to remain civilised. Most people have been honest about that. Sadly, that hasn't always been the case. But I think overall, we've managed to keep the debate relatively civilised. I mean, social media, obviously social media, and we see what happens on there far too frequently. But, you know, none of that detracts from the fact that we've moved this debate on in a way that the public want to see. If you look at the public polling on this issue, there is clear, overwhelming support for a change in the law. And even people who might not want to make this decision for themselves have said to me, isn't something I would necessarily want to do, but I firmly believe that we should give terminally ill people the choice. Look, I think people hold different beliefs. People follow different religions, different faiths, and I'm extremely respectful of that. And I'm very proud that we live in a society where we do generally live peacefully side by side. But I think it's not fair because someone holds a specific set of religious beliefs that they try and impose those beliefs and you know what they think on other people. And I do think we've seen that. Some people have been honest about that and have said this isn't something I could ever support. And I'm almost more respectful of that than I am of people who I know are fundamentally against the change in the law because of their beliefs, but have pretended to make it about the bill somehow. The bill is a solid, robust piece of legislation. And when you challenge people about particular clauses or particular issues, often there isn't anything to really come back with because they're just fundamentally opposed, which is totally fine. But we have a democratically elected chamber who did support a change in the law. And the fact that that is being undermined by a relatively small, unelected number of peers, some of whom do hold deeply held religious beliefs, then that just feels democratically very wrong. And also the other thing I would say is people of faith, different faiths, hold different views. And I think we've seen certain elements of leadership within faith communities purporting to speak for everybody. Certainly in my own community, my own constituency, I go to churches and have conversations with people. Over Easter, I had a conversation along these lines of saying, I just want that choice. And my faith tells me that the compassionate thing to do is to give people that choice. And conversely, I've got members of my own family who are Catholic who will say, look, I wouldn't necessarily want this for me, but who am I, because of what I believe, to deny other people the choice? So it's very easy to suggest that everybody of a religious persuasion feels one way or the other, and that just simply isn't true. I think it's put the House of Lords in a difficult position, and I believe that we do need a second chamber. And I've met some amazing people in the House of Lords through this process, including Lord Faulkner, who I'm now very proud to call a friend. There's some brilliant expertise and experience and knowledge in there, but these people are not elected, and I don't think that sits well with the public. And I think, we've now passed legislation to remove the hereditary peers, which I think is the right thing to do, and I think that conversation has now been opened up as to what that second chamber should look like. And I think that's a shame, actually, in some ways, because of the knowledge and expertise that there is in there.
Looking back, do you have any regrets?
Do I have any regrets? I certainly don't regret taking the bill forward. I mean, I had a very unique journey into politics as a result of the murder of my sister, Jo Cox. It's coming up to 10 years since Jo was killed. But I came into politics to try and make a difference. And on this issue, I know what it means to so many people across the country. So I certainly don't regret taking it forward. I regret the outcome, sadly, and I'm constantly thinking, could I have done more? And you obviously do that, don't you, when things don't end up how you might like them to end up. But I also believe that the bill will come back and the law will change. So, yeah, I try not to have regrets in life. I do feel that terminally ill people and the many, many families I've met have been let down by what's happened. Some people have campaigned on this for decades. Some people have retold the story of how they lost their loved one in very difficult circumstances. And they've been doing this for a long time, and I think for them, after the really positive feeling of the bill passing the Commons and thinking, goodness me, finally we're giving people choice to what's happened over the last few months, I think that is really disappointing, and I do find that upsetting. No, I mean, absolutely not. I mean, there's a lot of very cross MPs. The public will not give up the fight. I know they won't, because they email me and write to me every single day. And the direction of travel in other jurisdictions is very much that terminally ill people should be given this choice. So, the bill will come back, and I do believe it's only a matter of time before the law changes.
On Friday, what will happen is we won't get to the end of the Lord's process on Friday, and that's absolutely inevitable, and in consequence, the bill will fail. It will mean, through a lack of time in the Lords, that will be the end of the bill, and that's been procured by a small number of Lords determined to stop the bill. There might be a symbolic vote, but I very much doubt it. I think it will just peter out without any decision at all on Friday week. I'm very hopeful for the future. I'm bitterly disappointed about the way that the Lords, or a small minority of the Lords, have blocked it this time by the most appalling procedural tactics. But if we hadn't gone through this process, then we would have no prospect next session of getting it through. And I believe next session we will get it through. Well, I think it would take up until the end of next session, and now we don't know when the next session would end, but it means it would become law maybe a year or a bit from now, and then there would be a 2 or 3 or 4 year introduction period. It would still be a long way off, but the key thing is that the legislature, which means Lords and Commons, make a decision. And without this last 2 years of going through it in the Commons and the Lords, we wouldn't have got to a point where that was possible. Not to be abolished, because I think there's a real place for a second chamber, but we really, really need to look at our procedures, because process allowing a small number of peers to block a bill passed by the Commons feels completely wrong.